Hey, it's philzGoodMan, and there's been a ton of great updates to Krunker lately, which has been awesome. But because of all the great updates, there's one feature I feel like may have been overlooked. So obviously we have slide control, we have lighting, quality, but I feel like dynamic shadows is a really big one. So that's what I'll be focusing on for this video. By the way, if you are wondering about the new lighting options, so like low, medium, and high, check out Mr. Epic Krunker's video on it because he has a really cool side-by-side comparison that's super helpful. Also, there's a prize of 20k KR up for grabs, courtesy of the Krunker Casino Discord. To enter the contest, all you gotta do is essentially first subscribe to my channel, and second, join the Krunker Casino Discord, and you can find the rest of the entry rules in the description below. The Krunker Casino Discord is super cool. It's really amazing what you can do on there and how advanced it is for a Discord server. So I recommend that you guys check it out. I think you'll like it. Let's start off by answering the question, what are dynamic shadows? And to explain this, so first of all, you have static shadows, which is what you're already familiar with. So if you have shadows turned on, you see a building and it casts a shadow at the same position every time, right alongside that. So that's static shadows. And then dynamic shadows are going to be following a model. In this case, it applies to the player model. It may apply to more things in the future, or it may apply to other things in the map editor. In the regular game, it's mainly just the player model. And it follows the player model, and if it's working properly, there's going to be a single light source that simulates the sun, and then it should shine on the player model and cast an appropriate shadow. Now, it's still a new feature, so I don't think that it's this advanced yet, but it does work quite well. I know that some people prefer to play Krunker with shadows turned off, and a lot of people also turn ambient shading turned off, but I do think that this one is worth looking at again, especially with the addition of slide control in the game. There actually is a case to be made about competitive advantage for dynamic shadows. The main reason for this boils down to visibility. And to illustrate this, first I'll show you guys an image. So here's what I'm talking about, and I want you guys to take a look at this photo I took of my mouse. So look at the mouse itself, and you can see it looks really flat. Everything is really blown out, and you don't have much definition. We do have shadow here on the cable, and I just try to put as much light as possible, like really close to the mouse. And then next is the one where I try to create more shadow on the mouse. So this is using lighting off to the side. And you can see here, the mouse looks a lot more contoured and more dramatic overall. I gotta say that this wouldn't fully apply to your character model in the game because the character itself does not have shadows cast on it. The shadow is projected below it or like to the side of it. But what the shadow does do is it functions as sort of a background, and having that background does make it pop a lot more, especially if you have a white player model and a black shadow, then you're gonna have a ton of contrast. So this is one of the reasons why on YouTube for the thumbnails, you often see a shadow or a stroke applied to the text. It just makes it pop more, it's a lot louder. So if you're making thumbnails yourself, you could try adding a drop shadow to make your text stand out. Now I'll briefly talk about performance. So how big of a performance hit is dynamic shadows? And in theory, it should be no performance hit if there are no players on the screen. There's no dynamic shadows that need to be rendered. It's a question of whether the static shadows are being rendered dynamically. Currently, I don't think that's the case. So currently, I think that the more players there are, the worse performance you'll have with dynamic shadows turned on. Beyond that, I haven't tested and measured it yet, but it feels like maybe anywhere between a 10 to 40% reduction in frames. But a lot of that is going to also be dependent on the quality of the rest of your graphics settings. So the resolution scale, the lighting, whether it's like low, medium, or high. Because altogether, when I turn on the settings, like a lot of the footage that you see, I'm definitely getting like 30 to 40% reduction in frames. Beyond just pure FPS performance, there's two things that I want to mention. And the first is sometimes the dynamic shadows, it kind of looks fuzzy, like it's kind of flashing. So it's a bug. And the other thing is that it can cause like bigger performance issues. When I was playing a game on Oasis, it like messed with the shaders a little bit, or the static shadows, and the shadows were just being rendered as like lines. So it can cause issues, so just watch out for that. The gameplay that I recorded, I had, I believe, a resolution scale of 1.2 max lighting and dynamic shadows for most of the games that I played. and I did not feel like I was at a significant disadvantage. I did notice more frame drops than if I had the setting turned off. But lately I've also been playing with show FPS disabled, just because it's less distracting, and when I have show FPS disabled, I felt that I noticed it a lot less too. So to put it simply, if you want the game to look as best as possible and have slightly better visibility, I would turn dynamic shadows on and otherwise turn it off, but it is really subjective, and some people would think that turning ambient shading and shadows off makes the game look better somehow. Even something like visibility is subjective. I mean, some players playing Counter-Strike or PUBG, you know, prefer the high settings, high textures, and other players simply just turn everything low. The one situation in which I think that it always makes sense to turn the setting on, granted that you don't have bugs or significant performance hits, is going to be for Krunker filmmakers. I think it really adds a lot of depth, even in its current state, but in the future it might be refined more, maybe add a blur to it to make it look more realistic. But even for a super blocky game like Krunker, I really like this setting. At the very least, it's really nice to see this level of graphics detail being added to a browser game, and also give us the option to turn it on or off is really nice. I also expect that not only dynamic shadows, but other graphic settings like the lighting settings are going to be refined a lot further in the future. I'm really loving the lighting, by the way, and if you look at the different objects and models on the map, it really adds a new level of depth when you have everything on high. But anyways, thank you so much if you've made it this far in the video. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please help me out by doing so, and I'll see you guys next time.